So, what if the secret to eating healthier wasn't about, throwing out all your junk food, but actually eating more food?
Right, which sounds completely backwards.
It really does. But today we're diving into this psychological loophole in our biology. Basically, the easiest way to defeat a stubborn sugar craving might just be to, crowd it out.
Yeah, and it's a totally counterintuitive approach. I mean, for decades, the whole narrative around changing how you eat has been rooted in deprivation.
Yeah, exactly. Like stripping away the bad stuff.
Exactly. You strip it away, you white knuckle through the cravings, and then, if you fail, it's framed as a lack of willpower. But the material we're looking at today completely upends that entire model.
Which is exactly why we're taking on this mission for today's deep dive. We are pulling from our source notes to really demystify a concept that has become, frankly, incredibly loaded, and that is clean eating.
Oh, it carries so much baggage right now.
So,
So much. Because if you're listening and you're someone who eager to you know, optimize how you feel, but you absolutely dread that feeling of information overload, you are definitely in the right place.
yeah, we're stripping away all that intimidating jargon today.
We really are. We're bypassing the complicated fad diets, all the restrictive rules, and those incredibly expensive specialty ingredients that you can only find in like one specific aisle of a high-end grocery store.
Because the goal here is to just uncover the sustainable, enjoyable fundamentals of this lifestyle. I mean, for a lot of people, the phrase clean eating sounds like an exclusive club with a painfully strict dress code.
Right.
And just the word clean instantly implies that whatever you're currently doing is dirty, which, immediately introduces guilt and shame and anxiety into the whole equation.
Right. Let's actually address that baggage first.
Yeah.
Because if we're moving away from the idea of a strict restrictive diet, what does this philosophy actually look like in practice?
Because I know if I tell someone I'm eating clean, their immediate assumption is that I'm like living on steamed broccoli and tap water.
Yeah, which is the exact misconception these sources warn against.
Yeah.
At its core, the philosophy is really just about choosing foods that remain as close to their natural state as humanly possible.
So whole foods.
Exactly.
Mm.
Whole foods, minimally processed ingredients, while, actively avoiding added sugars, artificial additives, and heavily modified fats. But the mindset shift is what really matters here.
How so?
Well, the focus moves entirely away from restriction and entirely toward nourishment.
Nourishment. Let's break that down because I feel like that word can sound a little bit abstract.
Sure.
The sources make this really interesting distinction between just like filling your stomach and actually giving your body recognized materials.
Right. Think of your body less like a simple engine that just needs, generic calories to burn,
Yeah.
and more like a highly complex chemical manufacturing plant.
Okay, I like that analogy.
Yeah. And for millions of years, this plant has evolved to recognize very specific raw materials. So plants, proteins, naturally occurring fats.
Right.
When you feed it an apple or, say, a handful of walnuts, the plant has the exact enzymes, the exact metabolic machinery to break those items down. It extracts the vitamins and discards the waste efficiently.
But then when you introduce highly processed foods, you're essentially sending like unrecognizable synthetic materials down the conveyor belt.
Precisely. If you send down artificial chemical dyes or synthetic preservatives,
Or fats that have been chemically altered to stay shelf stable for like 5 years.
right, the manufacturing plant just doesn't have the standard operating procedures to process them. The enzymes don't match up.
Wow.
So the body has to expend an enormous amount of metabolic energy just to figure out what to do with these foreign compounds.
Which probably causes issues.
Oh, definitely. Often it sounds the alarm, which triggers an inflammatory response. So clean eating isn't about arbitrary moral rules. It's really just about aligning your inputs with the machinery your body actually possesses.
I mean, that reframes the entire process for me. You aren't restricting your access to joy. You're just stopping the influx of materials that jam up the machinery.
Exactly.
But this kind of brings us to the implementation phase, which is where I think most people completely hit a wall.
Oh, for sure.
Because my instinct, and probably the instinct of anyone listening who gets a sudden burst of motivation on a Sunday night, is to wake up Monday morning and purge the pantry.
The classic pantry purge.
You grab a trash bag, and literally every box of cookies, every bag of chips goes straight into the garbage.
And the research shows that approach is an almost guaranteed recipe for burnout.
Wait, really?
Yeah. It relies on a fundamental misunderstanding of how human willpower actually functions.
Walk me through that because, I mean, why is clearing out the junk a bad idea? Shouldn't a clean physical environment make the habit easier?
Well, in theory, yes.
Right.
But willpower is not a personality trait. It's actually a finite cognitive resource.
Oh, and
Yeah, every time you make a decision, every time you resist a temptation, you deplete that resource. So if you completely overhaul your life in a single day, you are forcing your brain to make hundreds of new conscious decisions.
right, like what do I eat for breakfast? How do I flavor my coffee?
What do I pack for lunch? Exactly. And by Tuesday afternoon, your cognitive load is just completely maxed out. You experience severe decision fatigue.
And that's exactly when the friction of just getting through a normal stressful Tuesday makes you like order a massive pizza.
Exactly. When willpower is depleted, the brain defaults to its most ingrained, deeply wired habits. The pantry purge basically sets you up to rely entirely on an energy reserve that is guaranteed to run dry under stress.
Okay, so if we aren't purging the pantry and relying on sheer discipline, what is the alternative? Like, how do you actually make the transition without triggering that decision fatigue?
You start ridiculously small. I mean, with just one single habit.
Just one.
Just one. The sources heavily emphasize this strategy of building momentum through microscopic changes. For instance, your only goal for an entire week might just be adding one serving of whole vegetables to your lunch.
And that's it.
That's it. You don't change your breakfast, you don't change your dinner, you just add one vegetable to whatever you're already eating at midday.
Or maybe like swapping out a 3 p.m. sugary snack for a piece of fresh fruit and runner.
Perfect example. Yes.
I mean, I have to say, that feels suspiciously easy. If the ultimate goal is a complete lifestyle shift, changing one snack just doesn't feel like it moves the needle enough.
Well, it doesn't move the needle dramatically on day one, no. But the mantra here is progress, not perfection.
Right.
You're trying to establish a new neurological pathway without triggering the brain's resistance to massive change.
Okay, that makes sense.
And once that single swap becomes automatic, meaning it literally no longer requires willpower to execute, then you layer on the next one. And this brings us back to that psychological loophole you mentioned at the very beginning.
Ah, the concept of crowding out.
Exactly.
The idea of actually eating more, not less.
Right. Instead of focusing on what you have to take away, the crowding out method asks you to focus your attention entirely on what you can add to your plate.
So adding more color, more fiber, more hydration.
Precisely. You focus on the additions.
Okay, wait, I have to push back on this a little bit because it sounds great in a textbook, but let's talk about how this actually functions in the real world.
Sure.
If I'm sitting at my desk at 3 p.m. and I have this massive biological craving for a glazed donut, drinking a tall glass of water and eating a fiber-rich apple doesn't magically make the psychological desire for the donut just vanish.
No, it doesn't vanish instantly.
Right. So if the ultimate goal is to remove the artificial junk, why is adding the good stuff better than just cutting out the bad stuff right out of the gate?
It's a really critical question. And it all comes down to the physical mechanics of satiety and blood sugar. When you crave that donut at 3 p.m., you are likely experiencing a crash in your blood glucose levels.
So it's biological.
Completely biological. Your brain senses a drop in available energy and basically screams for the fastest, most easily digestible source of glucose it can find, which is refined sugar.
So the craving is a physiological alarm bell, not just, a lack of discipline.
Exactly. Now, if you try to simply restrict, if you just tell yourself, I cannot have the donut, you're fighting a biological imperative with pure willpower.
And the alarm bell just keeps ringing.
It just keeps running.
Yeah.
But let's look at the crowding out method. You drink a large glass of water and you eat an apple with, say, a handful of almonds.
What is physically happening in the body when I do that?
Well, two things. First, you're activating stretch receptors in your stomach.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the water and the physical bulk of the apple's fiber actually physically expand the stomach lining. That sends a mechanical signal to your brain via the vagus nerve that you are getting full.
That's amazing.
And second, and arguably more importantly, you're addressing the blood sugar crash. The apple provides the glucose your brain is screaming for, but the fiber in the apple and the healthy fats in the almonds slow down the gastric emptying process.
Meaning the sugar hits the bloodstream slowly rather than like all at once like a donut would?
Correct. You completely stabilize the blood glucose curve. So, 20 minutes after eating the apple and almonds, the physiological alarm bell stops ringing.
Because the biological drive for the donut is just drastically reduced.
Exactly. You might still have a fleeting psychological thought about the donut, just out of habit, but you are no longer actively fighting your own biochemistry.
So by adding the dense fibrous food first, you are literally crowding out the physical capacity and the biological demand for the junk.
Right.
You fill the tank with premium fuel so the engine just stops demanding the cheap stuff.
Precisely. You circumvent the need for willpower entirely because your body is genuinely satisfied.
Wow. Okay, so if the implementation is this gradual, step-by-step process of adding whole foods to stabilize the system, what is the immediate payoff?
The payoffs are huge.
Because, I mean, human beings are wired for immediate gratification. If you are giving up your comfort foods, even gradually, you need to know what you're getting in return right now.
Absolutely. We're moving from the implementation to the profound why that actually keeps people motivated.
Right.
And the motivation completely shifts when you realize that the benefits go far beyond the traditional metrics we usually associate with diet changes.
So not just weight loss.
No, we aren't talking about weight loss, and we aren't just talking about improving clinical numbers on a doctor's chart for a physical like 6 months from now.
Yeah.
We're talking about fundamentally altering how you feel on an hour-to-hour basis.
Because the sources are incredibly focused on the immediate, tangible feedback your body gives you.
Yes, and it goes right back to that chemical manufacturing plant analogy. When your body isn't constantly expending energy trying to decipher and process artificial dyes, chemical preservatives, and massive influxes of refined sugars, it suddenly finds itself with a massive surplus of metabolic energy.
Right, because it's no longer fighting this continuous internal battle against its own fuel source.
Exactly. And the results of freeing up that energy are incredibly striking. You start to experience a higher, much more consistent baseline of energy throughout the day.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, that heavy, sluggish brain fog that so many people just accept as a normal part of the afternoon. It simply begins to lift. You see inflammation decrease, which often presents as like your skin clearing up. And crucially, your baseline moods become significantly more stable.
Okay, the mood stability is the part that genuinely caught my attention because the sources dive into the biology of why this happens, and it isn't just about, feeling proud of yourself for eating a salad.
No, not at all.
There is a very real physical mechanism at play here, and it all centers around the gut microbiome.
Yes, the gut microbiome is arguably the most fascinating frontier in current human biology. We are talking about trillions of bacteria, viruses, and fungi living in your digestive tract.
Trillions.
Trillions. And they aren't just passive passengers. They act as the command center for your entire immune system.
And increasingly the command center for our mental health, which is a connection that totally shifts how we view the food on our plate.
Completely.
Let me make sure I'm grasping the mechanics of this, though. From what we reviewed in the notes, human cells actually cannot digest the fiber found in things like vegetables, legumes, and whole grains.
That is absolutely correct. To the human digestive system, fiber is entirely indigestible. It passes through the stomach and the small intestine completely intact.
But then when it reaches the lower gut, that is where the microbiome takes over, right? Those trillions of good bacteria feed on that intact fiber.
They ferment it, yes. And this fermentation process is where the magic actually happens.
Oh!
When the good bacteria consume fiber, they produce byproducts called short-chain fatty acids.
Okay.
And these fatty acids are incredibly powerful signaling molecules. They strengthen the lining of the gut wall. They actively lower systemic inflammation throughout the entire body, and they communicate directly with the brain via the vagus nerve.
And this is where the mental health aspect really comes into play.
Absolutely. The gut microbiome is responsible for producing an estimated 90% of the body's serotonin.
90%.
Yeah, which is the primary neurotransmitter responsible for regulating your mood, your sleep, and just general feelings of well-being. So when you eat a fiber-rich whole food diet, you are literally providing the raw manufacturing materials that your gut bacteria need to synthesize the chemicals that keep you happy and resilient to stress.
That is wild. And conversely, I assume if you starve those good bacteria of fiber and instead you flood the system with highly processed fats and sugars, you basically starve the production line.
You starve the good bacteria, and you simultaneously feed the pathogenic inflammatory bacteria that just thrive on sugar.
Yikes.
The production of short-chain fatty acids plummets. Inflammation rises. The brain starts receiving distress signals instead of serotonin. This is exactly why a highly processed diet is so closely linked to poor sleep, heightened anxiety, and basically a total collapse in stress resilience.
It is a profound internal ripple effect. Like, if you provide the premium fuel, the microbiome regulates the entire corporation, your sleep, your immunity, your mood.
Right.
So, if feeding this internal ecosystem properly is the key to energy and mental clarity, we definitely have to talk about how to actually acquire the right fuel. Because understanding the biology is great, but eventually, you have to walk into a grocery store.
Which is an environment actively designed to confuse you.
Yeah.
I mean, the supermarket is where this lifestyle is either successfully implemented or completely abandoned.
It really is. Navigating it feels like walking through a minefield of deceptive marketing. I mean, every box claims to be natural or healthy.
Oh, absolutely.
But the sources offer a brilliantly simple filtering system, and it all comes down to basically ignoring the front of the packaging entirely and looking exclusively at the ingredient label on the back.
Yes. The ingredient list is the only ground truth in a grocery store. It is the most empowering tool you have as a consumer, provided you actually know how to read it.
Right. And the rule of thumb we've pulled from the notes is very straightforward. If you pick up a package and the ingredient list reads like a paragraph, or if you just cannot pronounce half of the items listed, it is a highly processed food that your body's manufacturing plant will struggle to recognize.
Exactly. The overarching goal here is to shift your purchasing toward items with the shortest, most recognizable ingredient lists possible.
Right.
The absolute ideal scenario is that the ingredient list is the food.
So like a bag of raw almonds just says almonds, a carton of eggs just says eggs.
Right. But, we also have to respect the intelligence of anyone trying to manage a modern life. It is not always possible to rely exclusively on single ingredient foods. There is a really vital distinction to be made between foods that are simply processed and foods that are ultra-processed.
Okay, let's explore that nuance. Because if I'm standing in aisle 4 after a 10-hour workday, trying to make a quick dinner on a Tuesday night, I am not inspecting the molecular structure of a pasta sauce.
Right. Nobody had time for that.
Exactly. So what is the middle ground between a raw vegetable and a completely artificial meal?
The middle ground is understanding the difference between mechanical processing and chemical processing.
Okay.
Mechanical processing is just doing something to a whole food that you could theoretically do in your own kitchen.
Okay, so if I buy a jar of high-quality marinara sauce, the ingredients should be like tomatoes, olive oil, garlic, basil, and salt.
Exactly. That food has been processed. I mean, someone had to crush the tomatoes and blend the ingredients, but it is minimally processed. The physical food matrix is still largely intact.
So you're basically just outsourcing the chopping and the blending.
Exactly. You are paying for convenience, but you are still consuming real food. Ultra-processed foods, on the other hand, undergo chemical extrusion.
Chemical extrusion, wow.
Yeah. They are broken down at a molecular level, stripped of their fiber, and reconstituted with industrial additives to make them hyper-palatable and infinitely shelf-stable.
So what kind of additives are we talking about here? Like, what should we be looking out for on that label?
Well, aside from the obvious high-fructose corn syrups and artificial dyes, one of the most concerning categories is actually emulsifiers. Things like polysorbates or carrageenan.
Emulsifiers?
Yeah, emulsifiers are used to bind oil and water together so a product doesn't separate on the shelf.
Which, sounds harmless enough.
It does, until you look at how they interact with that gut microbiome we just talked about. Emerging research suggests that certain industrial emulsifiers can act almost like detergents on the mucosal lining of your gut.
Like detergent.
Yeah, they can actually erode the protective mucus layer that separates your gut bacteria from your intestinal wall, which triggers widespread inflammation and a condition often referred to as leaky gut.
Oh, wow. That is a terrifying visualization. A chemical additive acting like dish soap on your internal organs.
It really is.
It really highlights the difference between outsourcing the chopping of a tomato and outsourcing industrial chemistry.
And that visualization is exactly why reading the label is so incredibly crucial. If you see ingredients that belong in a chemistry lab rather than a kitchen pantry, just leave it on the shelf.
This kind of brings all the biology in the supermarket strategy back down to earth. Because as we synthesize all of this, I think the most important takeaway we can establish is a realistic mindset for you moving forward.
Definitely.
We've talked about the ideal scenarios, the gut bacteria, the short-chain fatty acids, but, life is chaotic.
And perfection is the absolute enemy of sustainable progress.
The sources are incredibly clear on this point, actually. Be kind to yourself. You are going to have days where you eat ultra-processed food. It is woven into the fabric of modern society.
Right. You will go to a birthday party, you will travel, you will have moments where convenience is literally the only option.
And when you eat a slice of bright blue cake at a party, it is not a failure. You haven't ruined anything.
And this is where the philosophy of clean eating completely separates itself from the diet industry. If you break a rule on a restrictive diet, the psychological response is usually, well, I ruined the day. I might as well eat whatever I want and just start over on Monday.
Which promotes a terrible binge and restrict cycle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the true power of prioritizing whole foods is that the lifestyle is always waiting for you at the exact next meal.
It operates one meal at a time. You enjoy the cake at the party, and then for dinner, you just prioritize some whole vegetables, fiber, and lean protein.
Right. There is no guilt, no need to punish yourself, and absolutely no need for a Sunday night pantry purge.
Taking all of this into account, we have a challenge for you for this upcoming week. And I think it fits perfectly with this low anxiety approach because it requires zero willpower.
None at all. The challenge is simply to spend this next week observing.
That's it. Don't pressure yourself to change your entire grocery list. Don't throw anything in the trash. Just start paying attention to the labels of the things you routinely eat.
Yeah.
Where are the ultra-processed ingredients hiding in your daily routine? And more importantly, where can you make one very small, simple swap to crowd something out?
Look for the path of least resistance. Maybe it is choosing a glass of water before you have a soda at lunch. Maybe it's grabbing an apple instead of a boxed pastry for that afternoon snack.
Because these micro choices, these tiny additions of intact fiber and whole foods, they really do compound. They slowly alter the landscape of your gut microbiome day by day, meal by meal, adding up to massive long-term changes in your energy and resilience.
It is the ultimate long game.
We have covered the foundational philosophy, the physical mechanics of crowding out cravings, the incredible internal ripple effect of the microbiome, and of course, the strategy for surviving the supermarket. But before we wrap up, I know there is one final concept you wanted to leave on the table.
There is, and it ties the biology of the gut directly back to how we experience our daily lives. I want to leave you with a thought to ponder as you go about your week, making those small observations.
Okay, let's hear it.
We discussed in detail how the gut microbiome, fueled by the fiber we choose to eat, acts as the command center for our mental health, regulating our serotonin and our inflammatory responses.
Right.
If that biological reality is true, if those microscopic bacteria possess that much control over our nervous system, then how much of what we consider to be our fundamental daily moods or our natural stress reactions is actually just our last meal talking to us?
Wow, that shifts the perspective entirely. I know the next time I feel overwhelmed or foggy in the middle of the day, I'm definitely going to stop and evaluate what raw materials I just sent to the manufacturing plant.
It's a powerful question to ask yourself.
It really is. Well, thank you for joining us on this exploration. Keep observing, keep prioritizing nourishment, and we will catch you next time.